What ended your lifelong friendship? My best friend since kindergarten was Tyler. We did everything together, built forts, shared Pokemon cards, survived middle school awkwardness, and made it through high school as the inseparable duo everyone knew. When graduation came, we promised distance wouldn't change anything. I was headed to state for engineering, while Tyler stayed local for community college. For 2 years, we kept that promise. Weekend visits, daily texts, inside jokes that made our new friends roll their eyes. Tyler was the brother I never had, the one person who knew every embarrassing story and loved me anyway. Then Tyler's dad got sick, really sick. Stage 4 pancreatic cancer with maybe 6 months left. Tyler dropped out of school to help run the family's auto shop and care for his dad. I drove down every weekend I could, bringing groceries and just sitting with them during the worst days. When his dad passed, I took a week off classes to help with funeral arrangements. Tyler was destroyed, barely eating, barely speaking. His mom had died when we were 12, so now he was completely alone, except for the failing auto shop and a mountain of medical debt. That's when I had what I thought was a brilliant idea. My uncle owned a successful chain of auto repair shops across 3 states. He'd been trying to expand into Tyler's town for years, but could never find the right location. Tyler's shop sat on prime real estate. Corner lot, main street visibility, established customer base. I called my uncle and explained the situation. Tyler needed money, my uncle needed a location. Perfect solution, right? My uncle offered to buy the property for $200,000, well above market value, and hire Tyler as manager of the new location. Tyler would keep his job, get a steady salary, and have enough money to start over. I was so excited to save my best friend that I drove straight to Tyler's house with the news. That's where everything went wrong. Tyler listened to my explanation, his face getting darker with each word. When I finished, he stared at me for a long moment before asking the question that changed everything. How long have you been planning this? I was confused. Planning what? I just thought of it yesterday. I'm trying to help you. His laugh was bitter. Help me? Or help your uncle get prime real estate at a bargain price because my dad's corpse is barely cold? The accusation hit me like a physical blow. Tyler, that's not... You called your uncle before you called me, he said. You made a deal about my life without asking what I wanted. I tried to explain that I was just exploring options, but Tyler was already standing up. Get out, he said quietly. Tyler, please. I was trying to help. The shop is drowning in debt. Your dad would want... Don't. His voice cracked. Don't you dare tell me what my dad would want. You don't get to use his death to justify this. I sat there stunned. I don't understand. It's a good offer. More than the shop is worth. That's the problem, Tyler said. You see everything as a transaction. Always have. Remember when we were kids and you helped me trade my holographic Charizard for 3 regular cards because it was a better deal mathematically? I remembered. I thought I was being helpful, teaching him about value. This is different, I protested. No, it's not. You saw my dad dying and thought, here's an opportunity. You probably started planning this the day he got diagnosed. That accusation made me angry. That's not fair. I've been here for you through everything. I've sacrificed weekends, missed parties, failed tests because I was here supporting you. And I'm supposed to be grateful? You kept score of every favor? The conversation was spiraling, but I couldn't stop defending myself. I'm offering you a way out of poverty, a steady job, a fresh start. I don't want your uncle's charity, Tyler said. This shop was my dad's life. He built it from nothing. Every tool, every customer relationship, every reputation he earned over 30 years, and you want me to sell it to some corporate chain that'll gut it and slap their logo on the building. That's not how it would work, I said. You'd still run it. Same customers, same, under your uncle's rules, with his policies, his prices, his way of doing things. Tyler shook his head. You really don't get it, do you? This isn't about money. I was getting frustrated. Then what is it about? Pride? Your dad's dead, Tyler. The shop is failing. The debt collectors are calling. I'm offering you a solution. The moment those words left my mouth, I knew I'd crossed a line I couldn't uncross. Tyler's face went completely white. My dad's dead, so nothing else matters? Is that what you think? That's not what I meant. Yes, it is. His voice was deadly calm now. You think because he's gone, I should just cash out and move on. Forget everything he taught me about integrity and independence. Take your uncle's money and be grateful for the scraps. I tried to backtrack, but Tyler was already walking toward the door. I need you to leave, he said. Tyler, come on. We've been friends for 16 years. Don't let this... He turned around, and the look in his eyes stopped me cold. Friends don't ambush each other with business deals at funerals, he said. Friends don't call relatives behind your back to discuss your life like you're not capable of making your own decisions. And friends sure as hell don't tell you your dad's death doesn't matter because money fixes everything. I sat in my car outside his house for an hour, waiting for him to cool down. When he didn't come out, I drove back to school, convinced he'd call once he realized how good the offer really was. He never called. I tried texting him over the next few weeks. Short messages at first. Hey, how are you holding up? Then longer explanations about my uncle's offer and how it could work. Finally, desperate attempts to apologize for how I'd handled things. The messages went unanswered. My roommate at college, Derek, watched me obsess over the situation for weeks. Finally, he confronted me during one of my late-night rants about Tyler's stubbornness. Dude, you're not getting it, Derek said, looking up from his textbook. You basically told your grieving friend to sell his dad's legacy to your rich uncle. How did you think that would go? I was trying to help him, I insisted. He's drowning in debt. Did he ask for help? The question caught me off guard. He didn't have to ask. I could see he was struggling. That's not what I asked. Did Tyler ever say, "I need you to find a buyer for my dad's shop"? I thought about it. Tyler had mentioned the debt, the stress, the late nights trying to keep things running, but he'd never actually asked me to solve it for him. He was proud, I said. Too proud to ask for help. Derek closed his book and turned to face me fully. Or maybe he wanted to figure it out himself. Maybe he wanted to honor his dad by fighting for what he built, instead of selling out at the first sign of trouble. Selling out? I bristled. My uncle offered him a management position. That's not selling out. Working for someone else in your dad's shop? Having to follow corporate policies instead of making your own decisions? Yeah, that's selling out. I never looked at it that way. In my mind, I'd found the perfect solution. Tyler keeps his job, gets financial security, and my uncle gets his expansion. Everyone wins. But Derek was right. I'd never asked Tyler what he wanted. I'd assumed I knew better than him about his own life. The more I thought about it, the more examples I remembered of my tendency to solve problems nobody had asked me to solve. In high school, I'd helped Tyler study for tests by completely reorganizing his notes into a more logical system. He'd thanked me politely but never used my system. When he struggled with asking girls to dances, I'd created detailed plans for how he should approach them. He'd ignored my advice and eventually found his own way. I'd always attributed his resistance to stubbornness or fear of change. It never occurred to me that maybe Tyler preferred his own methods, even if they seemed less efficient to me. 3 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Tyler had found investors to help save the shop, local businessmen who remembered his dad and wanted to preserve the family legacy. They offered less money, but let Tyler keep ownership and make his own decisions. The news should have made me happy. Instead, it made me furious. See? I told Derek. He found the money anyway. If he'd taken my uncle's deal, he would have had more cash and less stress. Derek stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Are you seriously still not getting this? He found a way to save his dad's shop without giving up control. That's exactly what he wanted. But my uncle's offer was better financially. Stop, Derek said firmly. Just stop. This isn't about money. This was never about money. Tyler wanted to preserve his father's legacy. He found a way to do that. You should be happy for him. But I wasn't happy. I was bitter. I'd offered Tyler the perfect solution, and he'd rejected it out of stubbornness. Now he was struggling with complicated investor relationships and maintaining ownership when he could have had a steady corporate job. I convinced myself that Tyler would eventually realize his mistake, that the stress of running a business would prove too much, that he'd come crawling back, asking for my uncle's help. I even started checking local newspapers online, looking for signs that his shop was failing. When I found an article about Henderson Auto Repair expanding their services to include motorcycle repair, I told myself it was probably a desperate attempt to generate more revenue. When I saw another article about Tyler hiring his first employee, a young mechanic fresh out of trade school, I assumed he was spreading himself too thin. I was so invested in being right that I couldn't see Tyler's actual success. The shop thrived under his management. He modernized the equipment, expanded services, and built a reputation that drew customers from neighboring towns. Within 2 years, he'd paid off the debt and was turning a profit. Meanwhile, my uncle never did open a location in that town. He found another spot across town that failed within 18 months because it couldn't compete with Tyler's shop. The irony wasn't lost on me. Tyler's stubbornness had actually been smart business sense. He'd known his market better than my uncle's corporate analysts, but instead of admitting I'd been wrong, I found new ways to diminish Tyler's success. His investors were probably taking advantage of him. His expansion was unsustainable. His reputation was built on small-town loyalty that wouldn't translate to real business growth. I couldn't just be happy that my former best friend was succeeding. I had to find ways to prove that my solution would have been better. I graduated and moved to Chicago for my engineering job. Every time I came home to visit my parents, I'd drive past Tyler's shop. The parking lot was always full. The sign still said Henderson Auto Repair in the same faded blue letters his dad had painted 20 years ago. I never stopped in. My mom would occasionally mention Tyler in conversation, how well his business was doing, how he'd hired 3 new mechanics, how he'd started dating someone, a teacher at the elementary school where we'd first met. You should reach out to him, she'd say. I'm sure he'd love to hear from you, but I was too proud. In my mind, Tyler had chosen his business over our friendship. He'd valued his father's garage more than 16 years of brotherhood. If he wanted to reconcile, he could make the first move. The truth was, I was embarrassed. Every success story I heard about Tyler's shop reminded me that I'd been wrong. Not just about the business deal, but about Tyler himself. I'd assumed he couldn't handle the responsibility of running a company. I treated him like a charity case instead of a capable adult. My own life was progressing nicely on paper. Good job, decent apartment, climbing the corporate ladder. But I was lonely in Chicago. I'd made acquaintances at work and drinking buddies from my building, but no real friends. No one who knew me the way Tyler had. The few friendships I attempted followed familiar patterns. I'd meet someone through work or hobbies, we'd hang out a few times, and inevitably they'd share some problem they were dealing with. Instead of just listening, I'd immediately start offering solutions. Instead of empathizing with their struggles, I'd explain how they could fix everything if they just followed my advice. People would thank me politely and then gradually stop inviting me to things. I told myself they were intimidated by my intelligence or threatened by my success. It was easier than acknowledging that I was exhausting to be around. I started dating Rebecca, a marketing executive I met at a company mixer. She was smart, ambitious, and impressed by my engineering degree and career trajectory. We moved in together after 8 months, but even Rebecca noticed my tendency to solve problems instead of listening to them. "You do this thing where you interrupt me mid-story to offer solutions," she said after one of our fights. "Sometimes I just want you to hear me, not fix me." It was exactly what Tyler had tried to tell me, but I still didn't get it. If you're upset about something, why wouldn't you want help solving it? Because not everything needs to be solved. Sometimes things just need to be felt and understood. I thought Rebecca was being dramatic. If someone brings up a problem, obviously they want help fixing it. Why else would they mention it? This fundamental misunderstanding poisoned our relationship slowly. Rebecca would come home stressed about work conflicts, and I'd immediately start explaining how she should handle difficult colleagues. She'd share worries about her family, and I'd research solutions before she'd finish talking. "I feel like I'm dating a life coach instead of a boyfriend," she said during one of our last fights. "You never just sit with me in whatever I'm feeling. You always have to fix it." "I'm trying to help," I protested. "I want to make things better for you. But what if I don't need things to be better? What if I just need them to be acknowledged?" Rebecca and I lasted 2 years before she moved out. "You're a good person," she said while packing her books, "but you don't know how to just be present with people. You're always trying to optimize everything." After she left, I started thinking more about Tyler, about all the times he'd tried to share something important with me, and I'd immediately jumped to advice-giving mode. How I treated his emotions like problems to be fixed instead of experiences to be shared. I remembered when we were 15 and Tyler's girlfriend broke up with him at the spring dance. Instead of letting him be sad, I'd spent the whole ride home explaining why she wasn't good enough for him anyway, and listing all the reasons he was better off single. "I don't want to feel better," he'd finally snapped. "I want to feel sad for a while. She was important to me." I'd thought he was being dramatic. Now I understood he was trying to process something meaningful that I'd dismissed as inefficient. Or when we were 13 and Tyler's dog got hit by a car. While he was crying, I'd immediately started talking about all the reasons they should get a new puppy right away. Different breed, better training, upgraded doghouse design. "I don't want a new dog," Tyler had said through his tears. "I want Rusty." I'd interpreted his grief as an obstacle to moving forward, rather than a natural response to loss that deserved respect and space. Even as kids, I'd been solving instead of supporting, planning instead of being present, optimizing instead of empathizing. The pattern was so consistent that I started to wonder if I'd ever really been Tyler's friend, or if I'd just been his self-appointed life consultant. I began to understand why Tyler had been so angry about my uncle's offer. It wasn't just about the timing or the lack of consultation. It was about a lifetime of me treating his feelings and decisions as problems to be solved rather than experiences to be respected. When Tyler's dad was dying, he didn't need me to fix the situation. He needed me to sit with him in the unfixable sadness of losing his last parent. Instead, I'd waited for the funeral to end and immediately presented a solution. I'd commodified his grief, turned his father's death into a business opportunity, reduced his deepest loss to a financial optimization problem. No wonder he'd exploded. I started paying attention to how I interacted with people at work. Sure enough, the same patterns emerged. Colleagues would mention challenges they were facing, and I'd immediately start offering solutions. They'd share personal struggles, and I'd research resources and advice before they'd finish talking. I thought I was being helpful, but I started to notice that people stopped coming to me with problems. They'd discuss issues openly in group settings, but avoid one-on-one conversations where I might launch into fix-it mode. My manager, Patricia, actually mentioned it during my annual review. "You're technically excellent," she said, "but you need to work on your interpersonal skills. People find you intense. When someone mentions a problem, you immediately take ownership of solving it instead of just acknowledging their experience." "Isn't that what engineering is about?" I asked. "Solving problems?" "Technical problems, yes, but personal and emotional situations are different. Sometimes people just want to be heard, not fixed." It was the same thing Rebecca had tried to tell me, the same thing Tyler had been trying to communicate for years, but I still didn't know how to do anything else. My entire identity was built around being the guy with answers. If I wasn't solving problems, what value did I bring to relationships? Last Christmas, 5 years after our falling out, I ran into Tyler at the grocery store. He was loading cases of beer into his cart, probably for a holiday party. He looked good, confident, successful, happy. Our eyes met across the produce section. For a moment, I thought he might walk over. Instead, he nodded once, the kind of polite acknowledgement you'd give a distant acquaintance, and continued shopping. That tiny gesture hurt more than all the angry words we'd exchanged. I realized then that I'd lost more than a friend that day. I'd lost the person who knew me before I became obsessed with solving problems instead of understanding them. The person who called me out when I was being an arrogant know-it-all. The person who loved me despite my tendency to reduce everything to logic and efficiency. Tyler had been right about the Charizard card too. I'd convinced him to trade it because I thought 3 cards were mathematically better than 1, but that holographic Charizard had been his favorite card, a gift from his dad. He traded away something he loved because I'd made him feel stupid for valuing it emotionally instead of rationally. I'd been doing the same thing with his auto shop, reducing his father's legacy to a business transaction, treating his grief and attachment as obstacles to overcome rather than feelings to respect. A week after the grocery store encounter, I did something I'd never done before. I Googled Tyler's shop and read every online review. Customers raved about his honesty, his fair prices, and his willingness to explain what was wrong in terms they could understand. One review mentioned how Tyler had stayed late to fix an elderly woman's car so she could drive to her husband's chemotherapy appointment the next morning. "This is what customer service used to be," the review said. "Tyler treats every customer like family." Another review described how Tyler had refused payment for a simple repair, saying the customer's car was too old to justify the cost of parts. Instead, he'd helped them find a reliable used car within their budget and personally inspected it before they bought it. Reading those words, I felt a sharp pang of recognition. That was the Tyler I remembered, the kid who'd shared his lunch when I forgot mine, who'd helped me study for tests I was failing, who'd never made me feel stupid for not understanding something the first time. He'd built a business that reflected his values: personal relationships over corporate efficiency, community connections over profit margins, loyalty over convenience, everything I'd tried to optimize out of his life. I started driving past the shop more frequently when I was home visiting my parents, not because I planned to stop in, but because seeing it reminded me of what real success looked like. Tyler had created something meaningful that served his community and honored his father's memory. My engineering job, for all its prestige and salary, felt hollow by comparison. I solved problems for companies that solved problems for other companies. The work was intellectually challenging, but ultimately disconnected from any human impact I could see or feel. I designed components for machines that other engineers would use to design components for machines that someone else would eventually turn into products that consumers might or might not need. The chain of abstraction was so long that I never saw the actual people my work was supposed to help. Tyler fixed cars that real people drove to real jobs and real family visits. When he solved a problem, someone's life immediately got better in a tangible way. The difference felt profound. I began therapy that spring, finally acknowledging that I'd lost something important and didn't know how to get it back. Dr. Martinez was patient with my tendency to analyze everything instead of feeling it. "You're doing it again," she'd say gently when I launched into logical explanations for emotional reactions. "What does this feel like in your body, not your head?" It took months to learn the difference. To sit with sadness without immediately trying to solve it. To listen to someone's story without planning my response while they were still talking. "Why do you think you need to fix everything?" Dr. Martinez asked during one session. "Because I'm good at it," I said automatically. "Are you, though? How did fixing Tyler's problems work out?" The question stopped me cold. I'd been telling myself for years that Tyler had rejected good advice out of stubbornness, but the truth was, my solution had made everything worse. It had cost me my best friend and hadn't helped Tyler at all. "I think I fix things because it makes me feel important," I admitted finally. "Like I'm smart and useful and needed." What if you were important to people just for being yourself, not for what you could do for them? It was a radical concept. I'd built my entire identity around being the guy with answers, the one who could solve any problem if you just explained it clearly enough. But Tyler had loved me before I was good at anything. When we were kids, our friendship wasn't based on what I could do for him. It was based on shared experiences, inside jokes, and the simple pleasure of each other's company. I'd lost that somewhere along the way. I'd turned myself into a human problem-solving machine and wondered why my relationships felt transactional. "When did this start?" Dr. Martinez asked. "When did you first learn that solving problems made you valuable?" I thought back to my childhood. My parents were both successful professionals. Dad was a lawyer, Mom was a doctor. Dinner table conversations often centered around the problems they'd solved that day. The cases Dad had won, the patients Mom had healed. When I brought home good grades or figured out how to fix something around the house, I got the same kind of approval and attention they gave each other's professional achievements. "I think I learned that being smart and helpful was how you earned love," I told Dr. Martinez. "And what happened when you weren't solving problems?" I realized I'd never really tested that. I'd been so focused on maintaining my role as the family problem solver that I'd never just existed without trying to be useful. Even my relationship with Tyler had started that way. I'd helped him with homework, figured out how to build better forts, organized our Pokemon card trades for maximum efficiency. I'd been solving Tyler's problems since we were 6 years old. Maybe Tyler's explosion hadn't just been about the business deal. Maybe it had been about 15 years of accumulated frustration with my inability to just be his friend without trying to optimize his life. 6 months ago, I saw on social media that Tyler got married. The wedding photos showed him surrounded by friends from our hometown, guys we'd gone to high school with, people who'd stuck around while I left for bigger opportunities. He looked genuinely happy. The kind of deep contentment that comes from building something meaningful with people who truly know you. I wasn't invited to the wedding. I didn't expect to be. But seeing those photos made me realize that Tyler had found his way without my help. He'd kept the things that mattered, his father's legacy, his community, his sense of purpose, and built a good life around them. His bride was the elementary school teacher my mom had mentioned. In the photos, she looked at Tyler the way Tyler used to look at his dad's shop, with genuine love and respect for what he'd built. I found myself scrolling through the wedding album multiple times, studying Tyler's face in each picture. He had laugh lines now, and his hair was starting to thin, but his smile was the same one I remembered from our childhood, genuine and unguarded. In one photo, he was working on a car engine while wearing his wedding tuxedo, apparently fixing a guest's car that had broken down in the church parking lot. His bride was holding his jacket, laughing as he got grease on his white shirt. It was so perfectly Tyler, the guy who couldn't walk past someone in need without stopping to help. The same person who'd once spent his entire Saturday helping our elderly neighbor fix her lawnmower, refusing payment except for a glass of lemonade. I tried to imagine myself in that photo. Would I have stopped my own wedding to fix someone's car? Or would I have suggested they call a tow truck and deal with it later? The honest answer made me uncomfortable. I probably would have seen the breakdown as a problem that threatened the wedding schedule and immediately started calling service companies to handle it efficiently. Tyler saw it as an opportunity to help someone, even on the most important day of his life. The difference between us had always been there, but I'd never recognized it. Tyler helped people because he cared about them. I solved problems because I wanted to feel competent and necessary. Tyler's help came from love. Mine came from ego. My engineering job pays well and looks impressive on paper. I live in a nice apartment, drive a reliable car, and have a healthy retirement fund. But I don't have friends who've known me since kindergarten. I don't have roots in any community. I don't have anything that couldn't be replaced with enough money and time. Tyler chose meaning over convenience. He chose struggle over easy solutions. He chose to honor his father's memory even when it was harder than taking a buyout. I chose efficiency over loyalty. I chose logic over love. I chose to be right over being a friend. That choice cost me the most important relationship in my life. And unlike the business deals I'm good at negotiating, this is one transaction I can never undo. Last month I was home for my dad's birthday when I heard sirens racing through town. Later, I learned there had been a serious accident on the highway. A family with young kids, their car completely destroyed. Without thinking, I drove to the scene. The ambulance was already gone, but the wreckage was still being cleared. Tyler was there with his tow truck, working with the police to safely remove the demolished vehicle. When he saw me standing on the shoulder, he paused for a moment. Then he walked over. "Heard it on the scanner," he said simply. "Family's okay. Dad broke his arm, but everyone's going home." We stood there in awkward silence, watching his crew work. Finally, Tyler spoke again. "Your uncle ever find a location in town?" "He tried that spot across from the school," I said. "Closed down last year." Tyler nodded but didn't seem surprised. "Wrong side of town. People here like to know their mechanic." It was a gentle way of saying what we both knew, that local relationships mattered more than corporate efficiency in a place like this. "Your shop looks busy every time I drive by," I said. "Can't complain." Tyler wiped his hands on a rag. "Hired 2 of the guys from your uncle's place when it closed. Good mechanics. Just needed someone who understood the market." The conversation felt strained, but it was the longest we'd spoken in 5 years. I wanted to say something about the wedding, about how happy he looked, about how sorry I was for everything, but I couldn't find the words. "I should get back to work," Tyler said finally. "Yeah, of course." He started to walk away, then turned back. "Your mom says you're doing well in Chicago." "It's a good job," I said. "But sometimes I miss this place." Tyler studied my face for a moment. "It's still here when you're ready to come back." I don't think he was just talking about the town. That night I called Dr. Martinez and told her about the encounter. How Tyler had been gracious without being warm, professional without being friendly. "How did that feel?" she asked. "Like he's moved on," I said. "Like I'm just someone he used to know." "Is that what you wanted?" The question caught me off guard. "No, but I don't know what I expected." "Maybe the question isn't what you expected, but what you're willing to do now." "What do you mean?" "You hurt Tyler deeply. You dismissed his grief, disrespected his father's memory, and treated his most important decision like a math problem. If you want any kind of relationship with him, you're going to have to own that completely." I'd apologized before, in my texts and voicemails from years ago. But those apologies had been focused on defending my intentions, rather than acknowledging the impact of my actions. "I was trying to help," I'd said. "I didn't mean for it to come across that way. But intent doesn't erase impact." I'd learned that from Rebecca, from Dr. Martinez, from years of reflecting on my failed relationships. "What would a real apology look like?" Dr. Martinez asked. I thought about it for weeks. A real apology would acknowledge what I'd actually done wrong, not just how Tyler had misinterpreted my good intentions. It would focus on the pain I'd caused rather than the pain I felt at being rejected. It would also require me to admit that Tyler had been right about everything, that my solution had been wrong not just in execution, but in conception, that I'd fundamentally misunderstood what he needed and what mattered to him. Most importantly, it would require me to accept that Tyler might never forgive me, and that would be his right. The friendship that had survived 16 years of growing up together died in a single conversation because I couldn't see past my own need to fix everything. Tyler deserved better from his best friend. He deserved someone who would sit with him in his grief instead of immediately jumping to solutions. Someone who would ask what he needed instead of assuming they knew better. He found those people after I left. His wedding photos prove it. I'm genuinely happy for him, even though it hurts to be on the outside looking in. Tyler built the life he wanted on his own terms, surrounded by people who respect his choices. That's more than I can say for myself. But maybe it's not too late to learn. Maybe I can become the kind of person who values relationships over solutions, who listens before advising, who understands that some things matter more than efficiency. 2 weeks ago, I made a decision that would have been unthinkable a year earlier. I turned down a promotion that would have required me to relocate to California for a 40% salary increase. The opportunity was everything I thought I wanted. More money, more prestige, more complex problems to solve. But it would have taken me even further from home, from any possibility of rebuilding connections with people who actually knew me. Instead, I started looking for engineering jobs back in my home state. Not in Tyler's town. I'm not ready for that level of proximity, but close enough that I could visit my parents more often and maybe start building some roots again. I also started volunteering at a local literacy program, teaching adults to read. It's the first time I've used my skills to help people without trying to optimize their entire lives. I just show up, teach reading, and leave. No unsolicited advice about career advancement or financial planning. No attempts to solve problems they haven't asked me to solve. It's surprisingly fulfilling. Maybe I can find my way back to the person Tyler once called his best friend. Even if Tyler and I never reconcile, I owe it to myself and everyone else in my life to figure out how to be present instead of just productive, how to be a friend instead of just a fixer. Tyler taught me that, even in losing him. Last week, I drove past Henderson Auto Repair again. The parking lot was packed as usual, and I noticed they'd added a small sign, "Now hiring, experienced mechanics welcome." For just a moment, I imagined walking in and applying for a job. Starting over as Tyler's employee, learning to work with my hands instead of just my head, proving that I could value his way of doing things instead of trying to change it. It's a fantasy, of course. Tyler would never hire me, and I'm not qualified to be a mechanic. But the image stuck with me. The idea of learning from Tyler instead of trying to teach him, of following his lead instead of insisting on my own solutions. Maybe that's what friendship was supposed to be all along. Not one person solving the other's problems, but two people figuring out life together, each contributing their strengths without trying to fix each other's weaknesses. I never learned how to do that with Tyler, but maybe it's not too late to learn it with someone else. Maybe it's not too late to become the kind of person who deserves friendships that last 16 years. Or maybe it is too late, and this is just the price of choosing to be right instead of choosing to be kind. Either way, Tyler taught me something I couldn't learn any other way, that some things matter more than being smart, more than being helpful, more than being right. Some things just matter more than winning.